much missing Aaliyah Boston because the Fever looked so small out there. And even if you look at the total rebounds, the Indiana Fever were out-rebounded 45-26 tonight, you guys. And so many points for the Dallas Wings came off of second chance buckets, third chance buckets, fourth chance buckets. And the crazy thing is like the Dallas Wings aren't even big. Okay. And that's why a lot of us during the free agency period, we are wondering why the Indiana Fever were signing so many guards, because it seems like they are already guard heavy. Like, do we want any backup bigs? And obviously they signed Monique Billings. They signed Maisha Hines-Allen, which Mo Billings didn't play great tonight.
Angel Reese couldn't look away as the footage started circulating and the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Seeing Clark and Paige Bueckers trade buckets like it was a playground run didn't just break the internet. It sent a clear message to the rest of the league that the hierarchy is shifting. Angel has never been one to stay silent when the spotlight moves, and this unstoppable display had her reacting with a level of intensity that caught everyone off guard. The era of polite competition is officially over, and the fire in the Chi-Town Barbie's eyes said it all. This wasn't just a preseason game, it was a declaration of war that has the entire basketball world reeling.
Than she did in the first preseason game. She ended the night with 21 points, 4 assists, 2 rebounds, and 1 steal. But one thing that I noticed about the Indiana Fever's offense is it almost feels like there's an offense that they run that suits Caitlin Clark better, and there's an offense that they run that suits Kelsey Mitchell better. And when they are running either one of those offenses, it might not work for the other player. We saw a couple connections between Caitlin Clark and Kelsey Mitchell in the second half of the game, but if we watched the last preseason game, I told you guys, it looked like the Indiana Fever were picking up where they left off at the end of last season, which I felt like that offense is catered more to.
The matchup between Caitlin Clark and Paige Bueckers wasn't just about the points, it was about the proximity and the sheer competitive energy radiating from the court. They were glued to each other for the majority of the night, providing the kind of defensive intensity you rarely see outside of a championship series. Every time Caitlin tried to launch a signature deep shot, Paige was right there, challenging her space and refusing to back down an inch. Every time Paige looked for her lethal mid-range jumper, Caitlin was draped all over her. It was a heavyweight bout disguised as a preseason scrimmage, and the level of skill on display was frankly terrifying for any rival watching from the sidelines.
And if the Indiana Fever are able to get Kelsey Mitchell, Caitlin Clark, and Aaliyah Boston all firing, that is when it's scary hours. That is when you have 3 first-team all WNBA players who are working as a unit, who are all able to get open looks, who are all able to stay in rhythm on the court. That is when this team is going to be very scary. If they're not able to do that, then this team's not going to be very scary. This team could honestly be mediocre. Okay. And again, it's a preseason game, not overreacting. They're trying a bunch of different things. One other thing that I will mention though, on the defensive end, they have to figure out the communication on the screen.
Caitlin Clark came into this game with a massive chip on her shoulder after a rocky start to the preseason, and she didn't just bounce back, she exploded. She finished the night with 21 points, 4 assists, and 2 rebounds, looking every bit like the generational talent the world has been waiting for. But the numbers don't tell the full story of the absolute clinic she was putting on for the Indiana Fever. She was orchestrating the offense with surgical precision, finding gaps that didn't even exist a split second prior. The way she commands the floor makes it look like she's playing a different game than everyone else, and her efficiency tonight was a loud reminder to her critics.
Smith is not a center. And by the way, Alana Smith, she did not play well. I don't know what she was out. Like, she was just having a time today. Okay, that was not Alana Smith's game. I don't expect her to play like that again. She had 5 turnovers on the night, and the turnovers that she had were crazy. She was hitting people in the stands with the ball. Okay, Alana Smith was all over the place. I would not expect the Dallas Wings to look like that again when you match up with them in the regular season. Now, on top of that, Paige Bueckers had an outstanding game. And the thing that I noticed about Paige Bueckers' games, it seemed like she really worked on her 3-point shooting during the offseason. She was 4 for 6 from 3. And I don't just mean that she worked on it as in now she's able.
However, the Indiana Fever's offense is currently a tale of 2 different identities that are struggling to merge into one cohesive unit. There is an offense that clearly suits Caitlin Clark's high-speed, vision-heavy style, and then there's the system that caters to Kelsey Mitchell's isolation and veteran play. When they are running the high screen and roll with plenty of ball movement, the team looks invincible, skipping the ball around for wide open looks. But when they fall back into a 5-out set of ISO ball, the rhythm vanishes. Finding the flow between these two superstars is the biggest challenge facing the coaching staff, and the friction between these two styles was visible all night.
Now on top of that, Paige Bueckers had an outstanding game. And the thing that I noticed about Paige Bueckers' games, it seemed like she really worked on her three-point shooting during the offseason. She was 4 for 6 from 3. And I don't just mean that she worked on it as in now she's able to make three-pointers. She's always been able to make three-pointers. And that was something that actually frustrated me a little bit last season is I wanted Paige to shoot more threes than she was actually shooting. Now she is not scared to shoot them. Like there was a time that she was shooting step back threes in this game and she was so hot from 3. Paige is a very efficient player. So I was so impressed with that aspect of their game because she's going to be so much harder to guard. I mean, she can still obviously.
While Caitlin was lighting it up, Paige Bueckers was busy showing the world that she has evolved into a much more dangerous version of herself. She was 4 for 6 from beyond the arc, proving that her offseason work on her three-point shooting has paid off in a massive way. It wasn't just that she was making shots, it was the confidence she displayed while taking them, including some cold-blooded step-back threes that left defenders frozen. Last season, people wanted her to be more aggressive from deep, and tonight she answered those calls with a performance that was as efficient as it was beautiful to watch. She is no longer just a mid-range specialist, she is a 3-level threat.
The flagrant 1 foul on Caitlin Clark. She was fouled when she was shooting a three-pointer. It ended up being a landing space foul, and this was from Alana Smith. And again, you guys know I love Alana Smith. I don't think this was a dirty play. I don't actually even feel like this was a reckless play. Alana Smith was just kind of out of control tonight. Honestly, I don't really know what was going on because she normally doesn't make plays like this, but she went to block Caitlin Clark. She got in her landing space. She landed on top of Caitlin Clark, and Caitlin Clark looked hurt. I don't know if this is an injury, okay? I'm not truly going to speculate. I'm not going to go overboard with this, but when she did get up, she was wincing and she was kind of hobbling around. And
Paige's efficiency was truly staggering as she racked up 20 points, 3 assists, and 2 rebounds in just 20 minutes of action. She has this uncanny ability to stay in rhythm no matter how much pressure the defense applies, using her turnaround jumper and elite floor vision to dismantle the opposition. Watching her and Caitlin go at it was like watching a glimpse into the future of the league, where the guard play is faster, smarter, and more lethal than ever before. This kind of display is exactly why players like Angel Reese are taking notice, because the bar for greatness has been raised to a level that requires nothing less than perfection every single night.
I saw it for a second because she was listed out for today's game, but then Coach Stephanie White was actually talking about the injury with Justine, and she said that it's been lingering since college, and she said that they're going to get her checked out. They're going to do whatever they can to help her heal up. That worries me. It truly does. If it's something lingering that's been happening for over multiple years, that's not a good sign for Justine. And I will say, you guys, if it's something that's any sort of serious injury, I don't think Justine gets a roster spot. And I know a lot of Indiana Fever fans are really wanting her on the team and they kind of see the potential. She's 6'4", she shoots really, really well from 3. She's not a star player yet, though.
The reaction from the rest of the league, especially from high-profile rivals, has been one of pure shock and realization. When you see 2 players of this caliber putting on a show like that, it changes the way you prepare for the upcoming season. Angel Reese, known for her competitive spirit and dominance in the paint, is seeing a game that is becoming increasingly perimeter-oriented and high-octane. The unstoppable nature of the Clark and Bueckers duo is a direct threat to anyone standing in the way of a championship. The scary hours that fans keep talking about are no longer a hypothetical scenario. They are happening in real time, and the pressure to respond is mounting.
To go. She also was trying to take Caitlin Clark 1v1 pretty much the whole game. So she was going straight at her, straight downhill. And overall, yeah, first half of the game was fun. Second half of the game was no longer basketball. I don't know what we were watching. We were watching hot potato or something. It was quite a mess. But again, Dallas Wings win 95-80. This does not count towards anyone's record, but I do think that this will be a fun little matchup for the regular season. So with that, you guys, that's all that I have. So please let me know all of your thoughts in the comments below. Thumbs up this video if you enjoyed it. I can't even talk anymore. I gotta go. And thank you so much for watching. I will see you guys next time. Ooh.
But the night wasn't all highlights and celebrations, as a terrifying moment involving Caitlin Clark sent a shiver through the entire arena. During a three-point attempt, Alana Smith contested the shot but ended up invading Caitlin's landing space, leading to a flagrant 1 foul. It wasn't necessarily a dirty play, but it was reckless as Alana landed directly on top of the Fever's star player. The impact was significant, and for a moment, the silence in the gym was deafening as everyone waited to see if Caitlin would get up. It's the kind of play that can derail an entire season before it even begins, and the look of concern on the coaching staff's faces said everything. Caitlin was visibly wincing and hobbling around after the collision, clearly in a significant amount of pain. While she managed to stay in long enough to shoot her free throws, she was quickly pulled from the game and didn't return for the rest of the night. The team is being incredibly cautious, especially given the history of injuries that plagued the roster last season. With the final preseason game against the Nigerian national team looming, there is a strong possibility that they will sit her out just to be safe. You could see the frustration in her eyes. She wanted to be out there competing, but the reality of the physical toll of the game was staring her right in the face. Beyond the injury scare, the Indiana Fever looked alarmingly small on the court, particularly because they were missing the presence of Aaliyah Boston and Lexi Hull. Without their anchors in the paint, the Fever were consistently bullied near the rim, struggling to find any sort of interior defensive identity. They looked overmatched physically, and that lack of size is something that will haunt them in the regular season if they don't find a solution quickly. Even against the Dallas Wings team that isn't known for being exceptionally big, the Fever felt like they were playing uphill the entire time. It was a glaring weakness that every scout in the league undoubtedly noted. The rebounding statistics from the game were absolutely brutal and tell a story of total dominance by the Dallas Wings. Indiana was out-rebounded 45-26, a margin that is almost impossible to overcome regardless of how well your guards are shooting. The Wings were gifted second, third, and even fourth chance buckets because the Fever simply couldn't secure the glass. It didn't matter if the initial defense was good. If you can't finish the play with a rebound, you're going to get punished. This lack of grit in the paint is a massive red flag for a team that has championship aspirations, and it's something that requires an immediate attitude shift. What made the rebounding deficit even more confusing was the fact that the Dallas Wings were playing a relatively small lineup themselves. They had Alana Smith starting at center, even though she isn't a traditional 5, and she managed to disrupt the game despite having a rough night offensively. The Fever had signed several guards during the free agency period, leading many to wonder why they weren't prioritizing backup bigs who could provide some much-needed muscle. Tonight proved that those concerns were valid. If they can't protect the paint or control the boards, all the flashy guard play in the world won't be enough to secure wins when the games actually matter. Individual performances for the Fever's supporting cast were equally concerning, with Mo Billings and Damiris Dantas struggling to find any offensive rhythm. Dantas finished the night 0 for 8 from the field, failing to provide the veteran scoring spark the team desperately needed. While she did manage to grab 5 rebounds, most of those came during the second half, when the game had already lost its competitive edge. Mo Billings also failed to make a significant impact, leaving a massive void where the team needed production. When your role players are struggling this much to put the ball in the hoop, it puts an unsustainable amount of pressure on your stars to be perfect. Michaela Timpson showed some flashes of potential, but her performance was a roller coaster of high energy and low basketball IQ. Early in the game, she looked lost on the defensive end, getting cooked by nearly everyone she was assigned to guard. However, as the minutes ticked by, you could see her getting more comfortable and starting to understand the flow of the pro game. She only finished with 2 rebounds, which is simply not enough for a player of her athleticism and motor. She has to find a way to be impactful, even when her shots aren't falling, because the Fever need her to be a presence on the glass and a defensive deterrent. The clash of styles between Caitlin Clark and Kelsey Mitchell remains the most fascinating subplot of this roster's development. There were a few moments of connection in the second half, but for the most part, it felt like they were playing in 2 different worlds. One thrives on transition and rapid ball movement, while the other excels in isolation and creating her own shot. If they can't figure out how to coexist and complement each other's strengths, the Fever risk being a mediocre team that relies on individual brilliance rather than collective execution. The potential is there for something legendary, but the execution is still miles away from where it needs to be. The defensive end of the floor was where the lack of chemistry was most apparent, especially when it came to communicating on screens. There were multiple possessions where 2 Fever players would follow the same person, leaving a Dallas shooter wide open for an easy bucket. There was no rotation, no talking, and seemingly no plan for how to handle the Wings' movement. It was a chaotic display that left the coaching staff visibly frustrated on the sidelines. If you can't get the simple things like screen coverage right in the preseason, the elite offenses in this league are going to tear you apart once the regular season schedule kicks into high gear. Despite the chaos, the vision for this team remains incredibly high, with the prospect of Aaliyah Boston, Caitlin Clark, and Kelsey Mitchell all firing at once. That trio represents 3 potential first-team All-League players working as a single unit, which is a terrifying thought for the rest of the WNBA. When they are in rhythm, they create a gravity on the court that opens up lanes for everyone else. But that vision only works if they can stay healthy and find a way to communicate on both ends of the floor. Right now, it's a collection of high-level talent that hasn't quite figured out how to be a high-level team yet. Maddie Siegrist was a massive bright spot for the Dallas Wings, playing lights out and showing exactly why she's a force to be reckoned with. She ended the game with 18 points and 11 rebounds, shooting with incredible efficiency and dominating her matchups. She was 100% from the field for a large portion of the first half, proving that she can be a consistent scoring threat whenever she's on the floor. Her performance was a reminder that while the spotlight is often on the biggest names, the depth of talent in this league is deeper than it has ever been. She was a nightmare for the Fever's defense all night. In contrast, Azzi Fudd's debut was hampered by early foul trouble that never allowed her to get into a flow. She racked up 3 quick fouls in the first quarter and spent the majority of the first half on the bench, which is a difficult way to start your professional journey. When she finally did get back on the court, she looked uncomfortable and out of sync with the rest of the team. She finished with only 4 points, but there's no reason for long-term concern. She is an elite shooter and a smart player who will undoubtedly adjust to the speed and officiating of the pro level, but tonight was a humbling introduction to the big leagues. Odyssey Sims provided a great veteran storyline, playing well for the Dallas Wings after her stint with the Fever last year. She's the kind of player who brings energy and leadership to a locker room, and seeing her back on the court doing her thing was a highlight for many fans. She came in as a hardship contract player last year and proved she still belongs in this league, and her performance tonight only solidified that. She's a great example of the kind of grit and determination it takes to stay in the professional ranks, and her presence on the Wings roster is going to be a massive asset for their younger players. The battle for the final roster spots is becoming intense, and the coaching staff has made it clear that they aren't looking for garbage time scorers. They want players who can do the little things, the defensive stops, the communication, and the hustle plays that don't always show up in the box score. Someone like Justine Pearsall is facing an uphill battle, especially with a lingering injury from college that has the team worried. If you aren't a star yet and you're struggling with health, it's nearly impossible to secure one of those limited slots. The margin for error is razor thin, and the pressure on these young athletes is immense. As the game wound down, the level of play devolved into what some described as a messy game of hot potato, but the lessons learned were invaluable. The Dallas Wings walked away with a 95-80 victory, but the score was secondary to the evaluation of the talent on the floor. We saw the potential for greatness and the glaring holes that still need to be filled. The league is watching these developments closely, and the rivalries are already starting to simmer. Every game is a data point, and right now the data suggests that we are headed for one of the most competitive and explosive seasons in the history of women's basketball. As the dust settles on this preseason clash, one thing is abundantly clear: the league is no longer the same place it was even a year ago. The unstoppable display from Clark and Bueckers has set a new benchmark for what is expected from the new generation of stars. Angel Reese knows better than anyone that the target on her back just got bigger, and the competition just got a lot more dangerous. Whether it is a rivalry fueled by history or a battle for future dominance, the intensity we saw tonight is only the beginning of a saga that will define the sport for years to come. Buckle up, because if this was just the warm-up, the regular season is going to be an absolute battleground.